Daniel Martell. The man everyone suspected, after a silent period, now walked back into the spotlight. No police. No script. Just him. On camera. Answering questions. Looking calm. Too calm. He says he's still searching. He says he passed the polygraph. And the most disturbing thing is that he says she, Malaya, is gone. Gone with their daughter. Gone without a word. Just days after Lily and Jack vanished. Darwood says she put them in a car. Belynda says the house felt wrong. Janie saw her on the road. Logan says everything changed when Cindy showed up. So why now? Why come back? And why is no one else speaking? The live stream. On June 19, 2025, during a routine livestream dedicated to the ongoing case of Lily and Jack Sullivan, something unexpected happened. The stream was focused on analyzing new developments and dissecting emerging theories, most of which were beginning to cast suspicion on the children's biological mother, Malaya. The chat was active, the conversation intense, when suddenly a new name appeared: Daniel Martell. Not on camera. Not in person. He appeared in the live chat. No announcement. No warning, no invitation. He just started typing. At first, people didn't believe it. Could have been a troll, someone pretending. But then the host clicked on the account. It was real. Daniel's old YouTube profile, created in 2012 with a few old Pokémon videos. No doubt, it was actually him. The reaction was instant. Some viewers were skeptical. Others were stunned. The host stopped mid-sentence and said, "I think that's actually him." And the timing couldn't have been more intense. It happened on June 19th, just one day before Daniel's scheduled CPS meeting. Right when rumors about Malaya were starting to spread. Right when public opinion was shifting. His appearance didn't answer every question. But it raised new ones. Why now? Why the chat? Why this specific moment? Daniel's main motivation to speak, it seems, stemmed from his increasing fear for Meadow, the one child who hasn't disappeared but may be at risk. His messages were marked by rage, desperation, and a creeping sense of hopelessness. He described Meadow as everything to him, and expressed alarm that Malaya, who was supposed to have 24/7 supervision, had broken CPS protocol. This, he believed, could trigger authorities to remove Meadow from her care. It wasn't just a concern. To Daniel, it was imminent. She broke CPS protocols, and now Meadow is at risk of being taken. She's supposed to have 24/7 supervision. He wrote, repeating the line as if to make it hit harder. The tone of Daniel's chat suggested that this violation was more than procedural. It was about betrayal and fear. He had been silent for weeks, letting the investigation unfold quietly, but this, Meadow being at risk, was his breaking point. He couldn't sit still any longer. It was the fear that history would repeat itself. According to Daniel, Malaya has a deeply traumatic history involving the biological father of Lily and Jack. They lived together for 5 years, and the experience was reportedly filled with fear and abuse. That trauma, Daniel implies, has shaped her behavior, her decisions, and ultimately her actions since the children disappeared. It is part of why he believes she's running from the past, from scrutiny, from herself. Daniel confirmed what Logan and Darwood had previously claimed in interviews and on social media. Their version of events aligned with what he was now saying. He validated their concern and emphasized that his own interview with CPS was scheduled for June 20, 2025. That date, he said, would be a turning point. Malaya, according to Daniel, had cut ties with him completely. She no longer answered his calls. One time when she did pick up, she immediately hung up as soon as she recognized his voice. That, Daniel claimed, was proof she couldn't face him without crumbling. She couldn't stay around me because she would crack. I would find out, he insisted. It wasn't that she feared him, it was that he knew her too well. She couldn't maintain a lie in front of him. In one of the most alarming parts of the chat, Daniel said the RCMP investigation had shifted. It was no longer just a missing persons case. It had become a criminal investigation. Despite the weight of that revelation, he insisted. Kids are alive. He revealed that the polygraph tests had only asked about death. and that everyone tested had passed. This detail, vague but intriguing, raised questions about how the police were framing the case internally. Daniel also provided insight into Malaya's shifting behavior. He recalled a moment after an initial operations briefing with the RCMP, when Malaya told officers she felt safer with Daniel than with anyone else. But that changed. Minutes later, in the back of an ambulance, where she was granted a private conversation with her mother, everything flipped. "Malaya was a different person," he claimed. From his perspective, the change was instantaneous and terrifying. It marked a turning point in her cooperation and possibly in her loyalties. He believes Malaya left immediately after the disappearance, not out of grief or confusion, but because she was hiding something. He doesn't accuse her directly of harming the children, but he implies that she knows far more than she's said, and that her exit was carefully timed to avoid unraveling. He also dropped another disturbing detail. Meadow was extremely important to Malaya. So important, in fact, that she once said she would end her own life if the child was taken away from her. This wasn't just maternal instinct. According to Daniel, it bordered on obsession. And when combined with her past trauma, it painted a very fragile and volatile mental state. Daniel said that June 17 and 18 were critical. Those were the days Malaya allegedly disappeared with Meadow. She was no longer staying with her mother, and Daniel's attempts to inform investigators of her whereabouts went unanswered. That silence, both from authorities and from Malehya, only intensified his fears. Then came the most serious accusation. Daniel claimed that Malaya's family had found the missing children and was actively hiding them. He didn't offer evidence, but he pointed fingers, particularly at Cindy, Malaya's mother. According to him, she controlled her daughter, manipulated her into silence, and chased away media. Cindy was the gatekeeper, and no one got past her. In a stunning twist, Daniel also alleged that Malaya's family had stolen 2 of his sweaters. He believed the intent was to plant the clothing as evidence, framing him for something he didn't do. It was a chilling accusation. If true, it pointed to a calculated plan to shift suspicion. Daniel emphasized that he had taken proactive steps to clear his name. He volunteered for a drug test and had no hesitation about doing so. Meanwhile, he said Malaya had a history of marijuana use, something he believes undermines her credibility and stability. He wasn't just trying to make her look bad, he was contrasting cooperation versus avoidance. But the most telling moment of the entire chat session came when Daniel described Malaya's last known visit to their home. She didn't come back for her belongings. She came back to grab 3 things: the kids' birth certificates, school photos, and 2 small stuffed animals. Those toys belonged to Jack and Lily. To Daniel, this was the final clue. "That's all. Everything Malaya owns is still here," he wrote. Her intent wasn't to return. It was to flee, with all 3 kids. That single act, returning only for symbolic items of the children, was perhaps the clearest indication that she was not just grieving. She was preparing. In Daniel's mind, it meant she wasn't alone. She wasn't lost. She had a plan. And she had help. When viewed in full, Daniel's chat painted a disturbing portrait of fear, control, and possible betrayal. He didn't claim to have all the answers. He didn't even say definitively what happened to Lily and Jack. But he offered something that the silence of others couldn't: urgency, pain, and a cry for truth. Whether his claims are fully accurate or not, the insight they offer into the psychological landscape of this case is invaluable. Daniel believes the children are alive. He believes there's still time. And he believes the truth is being buried by people who were supposed to protect these children, not hide them. If Daniel is right, then this is not just a missing persons case. It is a tragedy in motion, powered by silence, shaped by trauma, and waiting to be uncovered. However, it's important to note that these details have not been officially verified, and Daniel's identity on the livestream was confirmed only through a few basic steps, not through any formal authentication. What shocked many viewers was how much of Daniel's latest information pointed directly at Malaya, especially considering that not long ago, His previous statements had focused more on himself, with little to no mention of her at all. That even made many people at that time believe that he was protecting her. On June 19, 2025, Daniel Martell finally spoke publicly in an exclusive interview. For the first time since the disappearance of Lily and Jack Sullivan, he laid out his side of the story. His tone was calm, but heavy, his words chosen carefully. He said that, "I know the truth. I didn't kill Lily and Jack." That statement set the tone for everything that followed. Daniel explained that he didn't wait for law enforcement to come to them. He went straight to them. He volunteered for a polygraph test, handed over his phone, gave full access to his Google location history, bank records, and social accounts. The polygraph examiner reportedly told him that, "You did a good job. You passed." But what unsettled Daniel, more than the test itself, was the kind of questions the police asked. They didn't ask him if he took the kids. They asked if he killed them. He seemed genuinely frustrated that the investigation had already made up its mind that Lily and Jack were dead. One of the most important details Daniel revealed was the existence of surveillance footage. On May 1st, just one day before the children were reported missing, Daniel, a woman who was believed as Malaya, Meadow, Lily and Jack were all seen together at Highland Square Mall. According to Daniel, the video was handed over to RCMP and corroborated by a coworker who saw them at the mall. That's proof they were alive hours before. And yet the video hasn't been made public. Daniel says he doesn't understand why. It's real. It's clear, he insisted. If it's legitimate, it changes the timeline significantly. It also raises another issue. If Malaya was with the children at the mall on May 1st, why hasn't anyone seen or heard from her since? And why didn't Daniel bring that up during the interview? The fact that Daniel avoided any deeper discussion about Malaya's role is one of the more curious aspects of his interview. He didn't speculate on her disappearance. He didn't suggest that she might be withholding information. He didn't express confusion or concern over her silence. He just left it there unspoken. That silence, in and of itself, raises questions. Daniel also shared that the police were reviewing traffic footage from an 8-kilometer radius around the Sullivan home. He says RCMP were trying to identify unfamiliar cars or patterns that might suggest someone came and took the children. But weeks had gone by, and Daniel hadn't heard anything back. Over time, Daniel noticed something else. The frequency of contact with law enforcement decreased. Where they used to call every day, it eventually dropped to every 5 days. He interpreted this as a sign they no longer considered him a suspect. He said that, "The eyes aren't on me anymore." Whether that's relief or overconfidence depends on how you choose to hear it. One of the most painful parts of the interview came when Daniel talked about his family. He said he hasn't seen any of the children, not Lily, not Jack, not even Meadow, since the day everything fell apart. Despite cooperating fully, Child Protective Services denied him access. He said he did everything right, his voice cracking. "Why can't I see my daughter?" Once a father in a household of 7, Daniel now lives entirely alone. It's worth noting that Daniel confirmed he lived with all the children and Malaya in the same home. That detail gives weight to his emotional claims, but also implies he would know about any underlying tensions or dynamics that led up to the disappearance. His experience wasn't casual, it was personal, lived in, long-term. Still, the one name he avoided most during the interview was the one name many believe holds answers, Malaya. He never questioned her. He never expressed suspicion. He never said whether the police had interviewed her, or if she had cooperated at all. Given that she was the last known adult with the children, this omission is hard to ignore. In the end, Daniel Martell's interview painted a picture of a man trying to clear his name while dealing with the loss of a family. He emphasized transparency. He emphasized trauma. But what lingered after the broadcast wasn't just what Daniel said. It was what he didn't. The bizarre step of the case. This phase of the case might just be one of the strangest yet. Just a little over 2 weeks ago, There hadn't been a single meaningful update. No new statements. No one stepping forward to claim any connection to the children, and certainly no one speaking out as an insider. And then, seemingly overnight, everything shifted. Suddenly, people close to both Daniel and Malaya began to come forward. Not just casual acquaintances, but individuals deeply involved in their lives, offering new details, new perspectives, and in some cases, startling accusations. The question now is, does this sudden wave of disclosure signal a turning point in the investigation? Or is it just a sign of growing pressure cracking open long-held silence? Let's talk first with Logan. He is either a close relative or trusted friend of Daniel Martell. From the very first days after the disappearance of Lily and Jack Sullivan, he was present at the scene, standing beside Daniel. More than just a supporter. Logan speaks like someone who lived through the chaos, witnessing the family dynamics, emotional breakdowns, and internal shifts firsthand. His words aren't based on speculation. They come from shared experience. He's called Daniel, the one fighting for them. Says, "We've been through a lot," and expresses a deep sense of betrayal with, "They turned on us." This isn't commentary from a distance. This is someone who was there. Logan shared a key detail that stunned many. According to him, on the morning of May 2, before everything unraveled, Malaya told Officer Mason that she felt safest when she was with Daniel. Those weren't just words. She meant it. That statement was made directly to a law enforcement officer, which is why, when Malaya abruptly left the next day, blocked Daniel on social media, and cut all ties, everyone, including Officer Mason, was shocked. Logan couldn't make sense of it. Why would someone leave the only person they felt safe with, right in the middle of a crisis? For Logan, the answer lies with Cindy, Malaya's mother. He firmly believes that the moment Cindy arrived, everything changed. Cindy, he says, has a powerful grip on her daughter. It wasn't long after her arrival that Malehya abandoned Daniel and disappeared. Logan describes it as a sudden shift, like plans were made behind closed doors. And once they were set in motion, there was no going back. He believes Cindy was the one pulling the strings, deciding what came next. Though he doesn't say it outright, Logan implies something deeper may be at play. He hints at the possibility of outside interference, maybe legal, maybe familial, that allowed Malehya to leave so suddenly and stay protected. He even says it felt like someone made a call and, boom, she was gone, protected. It's a chilling suggestion. One that implies this may not just be a family crisis, it might be a cover-up. What frustrates Logan the most is the system's reaction. Despite Daniel being the only one cooperating with investigators, submitting to a polygraph, giving up his phone, staying public, he was stripped of his right to see his infant daughter, Meadow. CPS took her away. No explanation. No charges. No justice. Meanwhile, the people who fled the scene and refused to cooperate still have custody or influence. To Logan, that's a broken system, punishing the wrong man. Logan also talked about the emotional pressure they're facing. He and Daniel have received death threats online. They're being targeted while doing the very thing others have refused to do: speak up. What scares Logan most is the silence from everyone else. He believes silence in a missing person's case isn't a sign of trauma. It's a sign of guilt. He said, "If you had nothing to hide, you'd be speaking." Though it was only mentioned briefly, Logan made a pointed reference to something most people missed. He spoke about a back entrance, a hallway, and the possibility that a vehicle came to the property that morning. He implied there could have been a quiet transfer, someone picking up the children without commotion. It's not a proven theory, but it's the kind of detail that should have raised red flags. Tire tracks. A car that came and left, and nobody talking about it. In the end, Logan's message was clear. He's not asking people to stop investigating. He's not saying Daniel is above suspicion, but he is demanding balance. He wants people to ask, why did Malaya vanish? Why is Cindy silent? Why is the only man cooperating being dragged through the mud? He also asked, they made Daniel the villain from day one, and now, no one's even asking where the mother went. Another figure who's recently come forward with explosive claims is Darwood O'Grady, and what he's revealed could change everything. Darwood O'Grady isn't just a name in the margins of the Sullivan case. He's someone who stood next to Daniel Martell when everything started falling apart. From the first day Lily and Jack went missing, Darwood was there. He's never stated his exact relation to Daniel, but it's clear their bond runs deeper than friendship. He was present at the scene, in the homes, in the panic, and he was the one who pushed Daniel to stop staying quiet and start telling the truth. He was told to stay quiet. Darwood said. I told him no. Tell the truth. That isn't something you say if you're just a neighbor. That's something a brother in arms says when things go dark. Darwood knew Daniel's life, the tension in the household, and most importantly, he knew what wasn't being said. But Darwood didn't just know Daniel. He knew Malehya. He had spent time in Cindy's house, Malaya's mother's place, where everything took a sharp turn. He didn't need to guess what kind of person she was becoming. He had seen the shift. He spoke like someone who used to matter to her. And when she bolted out of Cindy's home in the middle of the night with Meadow, her baby girl, he knew exactly why. Darwood explained that she heard he said the name, and she was gone in minutes. That wasn't coincidence, it was fear. Fear that whatever truth Darwood held might unravel what she was trying so hard to hide. He didn't pull punches. Darwood flat out stated that he was almost 100% sure Malaya put Lily and Jack into a vehicle and orchestrated their disappearance. He said that he knew who had driven the vehicle. I knew what vehicle was used. This wasn't a wild internet theory. This was someone who had seen the subtle signs, the changes in behavior, the secrecy, the misdirection. He wasn't guessing, he was remembering. Remembering the moment the dogs lost the children's scent at the end of the driveway. He saw where the dogs stopped. And for Darwood, that was the confirmation he didn't want, but couldn't ignore. He wasn't shy about calling it like it is. Darwood believed Malaya had snapped, emotionally, psychologically. He suspected postpartum, depression and unresolved family conflict had pushed her to a breaking point. She didn't think clearly. She panicked. She made it worse, he said. And maybe that's why, to this day, she hasn't come forward. Maybe she can't face the weight of what she's done, or what she's set in motion. But what made things worse, according to Darwood, wasn't just what Malaya did, it was who helped her get away. He believes she's being protected. He named the Shubenacadie Reservation as a likely hideout where her legal representation ties directly to the community's leadership. Her lawyer is allegedly the brother of the local chief. That kind of cultural and legal insulation makes her nearly untouchable, and Darwood knows it. He also brought forward a chilling near miss, an encounter with Janie, Daniel's stepmother, the morning of May 2. Janie showed up at the house, and there was Malaya, standing on the side of the road, fidgeting with her phone, looking guilty, like she just did something. Darwood is convinced Janie arrived just moments after Lily and Jack were taken away, and that the children were already gone by the time she stepped out of the car. It was that close, and no one stopped it. More disturbing still was Darwood's statement that others in Malaya's family likely know the truth, but are keeping quiet. They think they're protecting her, but they're not protecting the kids. That line cut deeper than any accusation. Because in that moment, Darwood wasn't just blaming one person. He was blaming an entire system of silence. A network of relatives who, knowingly or unknowingly, may have enabled a disappearance they'll never be able to explain. For a larger viewpoint, it's hard not to raise an eyebrow when you look at how tightly aligned the stories of Daniel, Logan, and Darwood are. The timing of their statements, all surfacing within days of each other, feels less like coincidence and more like choreography. Each of them reinforces the same narrative, with matching details and emotional cues, almost as if they were reading from the same script. And given how closely connected they are, not just acquaintances, but deeply entwined through family and loyalty, it begs the question, are we hearing three independent accounts? or one carefully constructed version told through three mouths. When people that close start echoing each other with no variation, it's not unreasonable to wonder whether there's bias at play, or, worse, collusion. In stark contrast to Logan, Darwood, and Daniel, whose testimonies often felt rehearsed, synchronized, and too tightly bound, the appearance of Belynda Gray, the children's paternal grandmother, carried a very different weight. She didn't speak in defense of anyone. She didn't try to shift blame. She simply shared what she saw, what she felt, and what didn't sit right with her. And somehow, that raw honesty made her words hit harder. Unlike the coordinated accounts of Daniel's circle, Belynda's quiet observations, the way Malaya stood in the kitchen without emotion, the way she didn't lead the search, the way she calmly said, "I'm okay," while her children were gone, painted a chilling picture. It wasn't accusatory, it was unsettling. And perhaps that's why, for many watching, it was Belynda's voice, not Daniel's, not Darwood's, that first made them truly start to question Malaya. When Belynda Gray first heard the news that her grandchildren Lily and Jack Sullivan were missing, she didn't panic. Not immediately. The message came from Malaya, the children's mother, around 4 p.m. At first, Belynda thought it must be a misunderstanding. Maybe the kids wandered off while playing nearby, like any child might. But as minutes passed and she learned that police were already involved, fear gripped her. The situation was worse than she'd imagined. Just hours later, around 3 a.m., the police showed up at her house. They weren't just making rounds. They were there with specific questions. Was Cody Sullivan, her son, and the biological father of the children there? Had the children been seen recently? When was the last time Cody had contact with his kids? Cody, exhausted and shocked, told them he hadn't seen his children since 2021, nearly 3 years. The separation hadn't been hostile, just final. After Malaya and Cody broke up, she had taken full custody and Cody had stepped back. Belynda, living with Cody for the last 9 months, could confirm it. There was no contact, no visitation, no warning this would happen. The next morning, Belynda didn't wait for answers to come to her. She drove straight to Pictou County with her sister and daughter. They arrived to help with the search. It wasn't the kind of terrain where you expect kids to disappear. The area was thick with fallen trees, overgrowth, and deep woods. Dangerous terrain for adults, let alone a 4-year-old and a 6-year-old. When Belynda asked Malaya where the children were last seen, the answer was oddly casual. The little woods next to the house. It didn't sit right with her. There was no trail, no open field, no plausible reason the kids would have wandered off deep into that forest. After several hours of searching and nothing turning up, not a sock, not a footprint, Belynda came to a firm conclusion. There's no way the kids are in that forest. But what haunted her even more than the silence of the woods was the silence in the kitchen. When she entered the house, she saw Malaya, not frantic, not tear-streaked, not pacing, just standing, calm blank. Belynda approached her gently and asked, "Are you okay?" To which Malaya simply said, "Yeah, I'm okay." It was a punch to the gut. She seemed like she had no emotion, Belynda would later say. There was no tremble in her voice, no urgency in her movements. Just numb composure. This was not the woman Belynda thought she knew. For years, she had admired Malaya. She was soft-spoken, well-groomed, respectful, and from all appearances, a good mother. Belynda had once called her gentle and sweet. But the woman she met in that kitchen felt like a stranger. Detached. Hollow. It was like she wasn't even there. And this wasn't just a brief impression. Belynda noticed that Malaya wasn't leading the search. In fact, she wasn't even asking questions. Belynda and her relatives were the ones trying to track where the children might have gone, not their mother. That absence of action, the lack of distress, the lack of exhaustion, echoed louder than any words. In the weeks that followed, things didn't get easier. About 3 weeks after the children went missing, Belynda and Cody were both interviewed extensively by police. Cody was interrogated for an hour and a half, Belynda for 2 hours. She found some of the questions insulting, questions about what color Lily liked, what games she played as a toddler, even though Cody hadn't seen his daughter in almost 3 years. How could he possibly know that? She asked aloud later. He was pushed out of their lives. It felt less like an investigation and more like a trap. Cody, for his part, was shaken. But weeks later, the RCMP followed up with a call. They told Belynda and Cody they were no longer considered suspects. Throughout it all, Belynda's love for her grandchildren remained at the forefront. She called Lily her little princess, a title reserved for the first girl in the family to inherit Belynda's signature front tooth gap. Lily was sweet, imaginative, full of life. Jack, on the other hand, was solemn. Quiet. He rarely smiled, but when he did, it lit up the room. He was an observer, a child who seemed to be studying the world rather than reacting to it. And now they were gone. As Belynda pieced together the fragments of what happened, she couldn't ignore the contradictions. Malaya's behavior, her lack of emotional breakdown, her limited participation in the search, her calmness, when others were unraveling, didn't match what a panicked mother would do. It's not that Belynda accused her directly, but her silence was thick with implication. Something's not right. And she's not acting like a mother would. Part of Belynda's sorrow wasn't just over the loss of her grandchildren. It was the emotional betrayal. She thought she knew Malaya. But the woman who stood in that kitchen didn't cry, didn't plead, didn't run into the woods screaming her children's names. She just stood there. Reflecting back, Belynda sees a wide chasm between the woman she admired and the one she encountered after the disappearance. She used to be so clean, so sweet. Her voice breaks when she recounts it. But now, she had no expression, no emotion. And even now, as the investigation stretches on, Belynda refuses to believe that Lily and Jack simply wandered off. The terrain, the timeline, the silence, none of it adds up. There is nothing more innocent and pure than a 4- and 6-year-old, she said with trembling conviction. They deserved better than this. In her words, there is no sensationalism. Only ache. Only disbelief. And only a grandmother's voice, straining to hold on to hope, or at least, truth. Obviously, there's a sharp contradiction when you compare how the relationship between Malaya and Cody is described by Belynda versus how it's portrayed by Daniel. From Belynda's perspective, Cody comes across as passive, even self-effacing. She describes a man who stepped aside quietly, who agreed to give Malaya full custody without a fight, and who hasn't seen his kids in nearly 3 years. No bitterness. No accusations. Just absence. According to her, Cody respected Malaya's wishes, removed himself from the picture, and tried to stay out of the way. But then comes Daniel, and his version is far darker. In the very opening of his livestream, he states that Malaya had deep psychological trauma from her relationship with Cody, that she was scared of him, that Cody was the source of her emotional damage. It's not framed as speculation. Daniel speaks as if it's an established truth, something Malaya allegedly shared with him directly. These two narratives don't just differ, they collide. If Cody was truly a threat, why would Belynda, someone who lived with him, describe him as withdrawn and cooperative? Why would Malaya leave her children alone in the house of a man she feared, only to maintain full custody afterward? And if Daniel is being truthful, why has no formal concern ever been raised by authorities about Cody's past conduct? Someone isn't telling the full story. Either Belynda is softening the image of her son, or Daniel is weaponizing Malaya's trauma to distance her from credibility. Or worse, both are twisting the truth to fit opposing narratives. But the inconsistency is glaring, and it raises a deeper question that continues to haunt this case. Who's protecting who, and at what cost to the truth? The current status of the case. The disappearance of Lily and Jack Sullivan is still officially classified as a missing persons case by the RCMP. As of now, it has not been upgraded to a criminal investigation involving child abduction, homicide, or abuse. That decision, or inaction, has stirred growing concern, especially as public suspicions have intensified. But according to Daniel Martell, the children's stepfather, behind closed doors, the authorities may already be treating this as a criminal case. He claimed during his livestream that police are no longer investigating it as just a disappearance. If that's true, it directly contradicts the RCMP's public silence and adds confusion to an already murky situation. Despite the swirling allegations and theories circulating online, no criminal charges have been filed. No one has been arrested. No warrants have been issued. Not a single individual has been publicly named as a suspect. While characters like Malaya, the children's mother, have become the focus of intense scrutiny on social media and in livestream discussions, law enforcement has not taken legal action against anyone involved. This has led many to question whether the RCMP is moving too slowly or whether they are deliberately withholding action due to a lack of evidence. From the start, the RCMP has refused to name any official suspects. This continued silence from the authorities has only amplified speculation. Some believe it points to caution. Others fear it may reflect a lack of direction. The timeline is also raising eyebrows. The children vanished on May 2, 2024, and it's now well into June. Over a month has passed without any legal reclassification, arrest, or press release from the RCMP. The legal status of the case remains frozen, and with each day, that vacuum leaves more room for doubt. Is the investigation truly stalled? Or is it happening out of public view? Either way, the families and the public are left with no clear answers. There's also a legal challenge that's hard to overlook. No body, no crime. It's a frustrating reality in many missing children cases. Without a body, without blood, without physical proof of a crime, police are limited in how far they can go legally. They may have strong suspicions, even inside knowledge, but unless they can tie someone directly to a criminal act, they're essentially stuck. That might explain why, even with multiple people raising red flags, RCMP still hasn't escalated the legal classification of the case. In short, the legal framework surrounding the disappearance of Lily and Jack Sullivan is suspended in uncertainty. There are no arrests, no charges, no suspects. Just a growing sense that something's deeply wrong, and that official channels either can't or won't say what they know. For the public, that silence is deafening. For the family, it's devastating. And for Lily and Jack, who remain missing, it's a tragedy that continues without closure. For the actions, the RCMP have taken several investigative steps, but so far, no breakthroughs have been announced. One of the most visible actions taken involved interviewing multiple individuals connected to the children, including those who do not live with them. Among those questioned was Cody Sullivan, the children's biological father, who had not seen his kids since 2021. He was brought in for a formal interview that lasted approximately an hour and a half. Cody later described the experience as emotionally draining, with questions that felt overly detailed or irrelevant, like inquiries into the children's favorite colors or childhood habits. Despite this, he complied with all requests. A few days after the interview, Cody received a follow-up call from RCMP, notifying him that he was no longer considered a suspect. Belynda Gray, the children's paternal grandmother, was also interviewed by investigators. Her session reportedly lasted around 2 hours. Like her son, she expressed frustration about the lack of direction in the questioning, but she fully cooperated and shared what she knew. In addition to these interviews, the investigation involved polygraph testing, which has been publicly acknowledged by at least one individual. Daniel Martell, the children's stepfather, stated in a livestream that he voluntarily took a polygraph test and passed it. He emphasized this as part of his effort to clear his name and demonstrate his willingness to cooperate with law enforcement. Reports also suggest that other individuals connected to the family may have been asked to take polygraphs as well, though their identities have not been publicly confirmed. Importantly, the RCMP has not released any official statements about who took the tests or what the results were. That may be because, under Canadian law, polygraph results are not admissible as legal evidence, meaning they cannot be used in court and carry no official weight in determining guilt or innocence. Still, such tests can be used as informal tools to guide investigative leads. The combination of interviews and polygraph testing shows that police have made some effort to engage with individuals close to the case. The pressure stemming from frequent live streams and interviews has significantly altered public discourse around the disappearance of Lily and Jack Sullivan. These videos have reached thousands of viewers and garnered hundreds of emotional responses, intensifying scrutiny on all parties involved. Their continued presence has not only shaped how the public perceives the case, but also placed immense pressure on law enforcement to take definitive action. Meanwhile, the RCMP has maintained a tight-lipped approach since the initial week following the children's disappearance. Beyond a few brief email responses or one-line statements, no detailed updates or public clarifications have been issued. This silence has led many to believe that the authorities are deliberately withholding information, either to protect the integrity of the investigation or because they lack substantial evidence to justify public disclosures. Public dissatisfaction with law enforcement has grown sharply. On social media and in comment sections of live streams and news posts, citizens have voiced frustration about the lack of suspects, arrests, or transparency. Many are calling for visible actions, such as the release of surveillance footage, the identification of a person of interest, or even just official acknowledgement of the popular theories circulating online. Calls for transparency have also reached a boiling point. The absence of regular press briefings or public engagement has fueled mistrust. Many believe the RCMP needs to appoint a spokesperson or hold a press conference to address the many questions that now linger. Were the children abducted? Is Malaya cooperating? Why has there been no legal action taken against any party? Compounding the confusion is the rapid spread of information via non-traditional channels. They have become the primary sources of ongoing updates about the case. However, these channels often share speculative or unverified content, muddying the waters and making it increasingly difficult to distinguish between fact and fiction. This silence from official channels is now being interpreted by some as suspicious. If Daniel and others are wrong in their public statements, why hasn't the RCMP corrected the narrative? Why are they letting these accusations fester without rebuttal? To the public, the inaction is being perceived not as caution, but as complicity, or worse, as a cover-up. There are growing concerns among experts and neutral observers that these amateur live streams and speculative discussions could ultimately harm the investigation. Some worry that unverified claims could tip off actual suspects, lead to the destruction of evidence, or create public bias that could jeopardize a future legal proceeding. Others caution that innocent people could be unjustly vilified in the process. Another major concern lies in the conspicuous absence of investigative journalism from mainstream media outlets. Since early May, there have been virtually no follow-up stories or investigative pieces in Canadian newspapers or television. As a result, livestream creators have effectively taken the lead in shaping the public narrative, a development that has left many uneasy about the reliability and accountability of the information being shared. Adding to public frustration is the RCMP's failure to host even a single official press conference. For more than a month, the only communications have come through passive, impersonal formats like email. No live Q&A, no public reassurances, and no commitment to ongoing updates. Families, citizens, and child advocacy groups feel abandoned and unheard. Even more troubling is the lack of transparency regarding surveillance footage. Despite repeated mentions from Daniel and Darwood about cameras at Highland Mall that may show who left with the children, the RCMP has neither confirmed nor denied having such footage. The absence of any visual evidence being released has fueled theories of suppression and selective disclosure. Meanwhile, a stark division has formed between the two families involved. The paternal side, Cody Sullivan and his mother Belynda Gray, has been active in the search, regularly appearing on live streams and media interviews. In contrast, Malaya and her side of the family have remained silent and invisible, which many in the public interpret as suspicious or even incriminating. This division has shaped public loyalty and contributed to the growing belief that one side is hiding something. Equally glaring is the lack of any public forensic reporting. In many missing person cases, there are updates about the condition of the home, any items collected as evidence, or at least a timeline of what authorities have examined. In this case, there has been no mention of DNA samples, personal items retrieved, or technical analyses. Without even this baseline level of information, many are left questioning whether the investigation has stalled, or worse, if it never really began in earnest. Perhaps most shocking of all is the silence from child protection agencies. Given that 2 young children are missing under unclear circumstances, one would expect organizations like Child Find Nova Scotia or Kids Help Phone to weigh in or offer support. Instead, there has been no visible advocacy for Lily and Jack from any institutional body, raising ethical and procedural questions about whose responsibility it is to speak for the voiceless in this case. Where is Malaya? As the case surrounding the disappearance of Lily and Jack Sullivan stretches into its second month, growing attention has turned toward Malaya, the children's mother, and the increasingly suspicious nature of her actions. According to Daniel Martell, her former partner and stepfather to the children, Malaya's behavior since May 2nd has raised multiple red flags, prompting both public concern and law enforcement scrutiny. Daniel states unequivocally that Malaya has not cooperated with the investigation from the beginning. He says she made no effort to assist in the search for Lily and Jack, did not communicate with authorities beyond the earliest contact, and ultimately removed herself from the process altogether. She didn't help. She didn't stay. She walked away from all of it, Daniel said during a livestream. In the eyes of many, her silence has been louder than words. Not just a withdrawal, but a rejection of responsibility. Even more alarming, Daniel claims Malaya fled with their youngest child, Meadow, and has not been reachable since the morning the 2 older children were reported missing. She ran with Meadow, adding that both RCMP and CPS have attempted to locate her without success. They can't find her. CPS tried. RCMP tried. She's gone. This revelation has deeply unsettled the public, especially considering that Meadow's safety cannot be verified, and that no one, not even close family members, has reportedly been in contact with her since. What adds a sharper edge to this narrative is Daniel's assertion that the RCMP now views the situation as a criminal investigation, even though the agency has yet to publicly reclassify the case. They're looking at this like a crime now. They just haven't said it yet. He believes that the silence from law enforcement is strategic, that they are building a case, collecting evidence before taking legal action. This delay, however, has caused frustration among those following the case closely. It leaves many asking, if something truly criminal occurred, why hasn't someone been arrested? Daniel's strongest claim comes with a tone of finality. He believes the RCMP already knows the truth. They know. They're waiting. But I know what happened, he insists. In his view, the authorities are simply holding back until they are confident enough to act, a notion that offers both hope and impatience to those desperate for answers. In summary, the current portrait of Malaya, painted by Daniel, is one of evasion and concealment. Her decision to flee with Meadow, combined with her refusal to engage in the investigation, has only deepened suspicions. Whether she is hiding in fear, panic, or guilt remains unclear, but as long as she stays out of reach, the pressure will continue to build. For Lily and Jack Sullivan, as of now, there has been no physical evidence to confirm that Lily and Jack Sullivan are deceased. There are no bodies, no signs of a violent struggle, no blood, nothing to suggest that a murder took place. Because of that, the RCMP continues to treat this as a missing persons case, not a criminal investigation for homicide or child abduction. This classification means, officially, the authorities don't have enough to label it as a crime. But that doesn't mean something terrible didn't happen. One of the most important details mentioned repeatedly by those close to the family is the behavior of the scent-tracking dogs. According to reports, the dogs followed a scent and stopped cold at the end of the driveway. They didn't lead into the woods. They didn't go toward the nearby trails. They stopped at the exact point where a car could have easily pulled up. This simple fact has fueled a powerful theory that someone picked up the kids and drove them away. That they didn't disappear randomly. They were taken. The question is, by who? On the morning of May 2nd, there were 7 people inside that home. 7 adults who were there the day Lily and Jack were last seen. Yet, none of them can say what the kids were doing. No one remembers hearing them talk. No one knows what they wore that morning. No one mentions breakfast, playtime, nothing. That kind of silence doesn't come from confusion. It doesn't sound like shock. It sounds like something else entirely, like control. Like everyone agreed to say nothing. Some people now believe the children were never missing, in the sense we understand it. Instead, they think Lily and Jack may have been hidden, deliberately removed from the home and placed somewhere else. Possibly with relatives or people close to their mother, Malaya. There's speculation that this could be related to a fear of losing custody, or fear that CPS might step in. If someone thought the kids were about to be taken away, maybe they thought hiding them was the only way to keep them safe. If that's the case, the tragedy may not be about loss of life, but a deeply misguided attempt at protection. Even more concerning, there was never an Amber Alert issued for Lily and Jack. That's unusual in cases where authorities suspect danger or abduction. And to this day, RCMP hasn't named any suspects, filed any charges, or made any arrests. Some believe this means police don't have enough evidence. Others think it means they do know more, but are being cautious, building their case quietly before going public. The longer this goes on, the more the silence becomes part of the story. From the house full of people who say nothing, to the law enforcement agencies giving minimal updates, and to the lack of official statements from those who were closest to the children. There's an eerie calm around the whole case, and it's hard not to feel like something is being kept from the public. Could Lily and Jack still be alive? Maybe. If they are, they're not lost in the woods. They were never found there. Not even a shoe, not a toy. If they are alive, they're somewhere out of reach, kept hidden. Possibly by people who think they're doing the right thing. Or worse, by people who simply don't want to face the consequences of what happened. For the Malaya's family, there's been a growing cloud of suspicion surrounding them, particularly her mother, as more details of the Lily and Jack Sullivan case continue to emerge. One of the most persistent claims is that Malaya's mother is actively managing her daughter's behavior. According to multiple sources, attempts by journalists and concerned individuals to reach out to Malaya through platforms were blocked or ignored, allegedly not by Malaya herself, but by her mother. This kind of gatekeeping has raised serious questions. Why would a family member filter communication during a child disappearance crisis, unless there's something they're trying to prevent from getting out? Reporters have also described being turned away when they visited the home of Malaya's mother shortly after the children went missing. Instead of engaging with the media or using public platforms to plead for help in finding the children, the family reportedly shut down all avenues of outside communication. That silence became deafening. It gave off the impression, not of grief or confusion, but of intentional avoidance. And in cases involving missing kids, that kind of silence is often interpreted not as innocence, but as protection or concealment. More troubling are the growing allegations that Malaya's family already knows the truth about what happened to Lily and Jack. While no direct evidence has been made public, several people close to the situation, including those who have appeared in live streams, have strongly implied that members of the family were present at crucial moments and may be withholding information. One recurring theory is that someone in the family helped move or hide the children and is now covering it up. In other words, The story isn't that the family is confused or unaware, it's that they're complicit. There's also a darker suggestion that the children are not only alive, but being actively hidden by the family. Some believe the kids were taken somewhere safe, but out of reach of law enforcement, child protective services, or even their biological father's side of the family. These claims, while not confirmed, have continued to gain traction in online discussions. Supporters of this theory argue that the family's continued refusal to make public appearances or cooperate with police only strengthens the likelihood of a cover-up. Altogether, the lack of transparency, refusal to engage, and pattern of controlling behavior have painted Malaya's family as central figures not just in the story, but in the ongoing mystery of what really happened to Lily and Jack. After weeks of live streams, interviews, and rising public interest, one chilling truth remains: we still don't know why. Why would Malaya, a mother once described as gentle, polite, and devoted to her children, suddenly disappear with her youngest daughter, and go completely dark after her other two children vanished? What's the real motive behind her silence and her escape? At the center of this unraveling mystery lies a deeply unsettling question: was this a reaction to fear, trauma, or something more deliberate? Daniel, Logan, and Darwood have all described Malaya as emotionally unstable, possibly suffering from postpartum issues, and heavily influenced by her mother. But even with that in mind, how does one explain her total lack of cooperation with RCMP and CPS? Why would a mother vanish when her children are missing? Unless she's hiding something. Some believe she is protecting the children. Others fear she may be protecting herself from legal consequences, from truth, or from something more sinister. But if her intention was to shield her children, why not work with authorities? Why walk away when so many were willing to help? Then there's the chaos that followed. Live streams filled with accusations, online theorists dissecting every facial expression, every silence. This has become more than a missing person case, it's a media firestorm. And part of that chaos, some say, was sparked by Malaya's disappearance. By refusing to speak, by letting others define the narrative, she allowed a vacuum to form, one filled with outrage, division, and confusion. And in that chaos, more questions rise. How much of what we've heard is true? Are Daniel's accounts accurate, or colored by his own desperation and bitterness? Are the allegations from Darwood and Logan genuine, or are they all just echoing one another in a coordinated attempt to shift suspicion? What makes this even harder to untangle is that so much of the case now rests on second-hand information, on what someone heard, saw, or believed. And when truth becomes a matter of perspective, justice becomes nearly impossible to find. Until Malaya speaks, or the children are found, we're left with just pieces. A broken puzzle. And a haunting sense that the real story, whatever it is, might be even darker than we imagine. The disappearance of Lily and Jack Sullivan has shaken many of us, not just because of the mystery itself, but because of what it reveals about how we respond to tragedy. In the absence of answers, we often rush to fill the silence with theories, outrage, and accusations. And while some of those voices may come from a place of truth, others only add confusion, fear, and distraction. One of the clearest lessons from this case is the need for caution. In today's world, information spreads fast. Live streams, social media posts, breakdowns, they can make someone look guilty before a single piece of evidence is shown. We must learn to slow down, to ask, what do we know versus what we've simply heard? Which details have been confirmed by law enforcement, and which are still speculation? The RCMP may not be perfect, and yes, silence from official sources can be frustrating. But rushing to judgment before they've had a chance to do their work can cause more harm than good. We must hold space for the process. We must let investigators gather facts, not force conclusions based on partial truths or internet drama. Most of all, this case reminds us what truly matters: the children. Lily and Jack, two innocent souls who didn't choose this chaos, who didn't ask to become symbols in a viral story. Their safety, wherever they are, should remain the focus, not the drama. not the theories, not the clicks. So as we wait for answers, let us hold on to hope. Let us pray that Lily and Jack are safe, that they're found soon, and that the truth, however painful, will finally come to light. And let us learn from this to be more discerning, more patient, and always more protective of those who have no voice of their own.